Elisa Lam disappeared from an LA hotel with a creepy reputation and was found dead weeks later. This is the strange and tragic death of Elisa Lam. In January 2013, Elisa Lam was just your everyday tourist, a 21-year-old student hailing from Vancouver, British Columbia. She was traveling alone and booked a stay at the Cecil Hotel, a downtown Los Angeles place with a storied history. Millions of people from all over the world, just like Elisa Lam, visit LA every year. Initially, Lam was assigned a shared room at the Cecil, where she had 2 roommates. Their names are unknown, but we do know that they ended up complaining to the hotel about Lam's unusual behavior, according to Vice. We also don't know what exactly that behavior was, but hotel management decided to move Lam to her own room 3 days into her stay, where she would remain until her disappearance a few days later. Elisa Lam was originally supposed to check out of the Cecil Hotel on January 31, 2013. She didn't, however, and she didn't call her parents like she said she would either. The Lams contacted the hotel and later the Los Angeles Police Department. However, it would be another 2 weeks before Elisa Lam was found.
We're continuing the investigation now, and we're looking for your help.
During the investigation into Lam's disappearance, the LAPD decided to release footage of one of the last known sightings of her, a security video from one of the hotel's elevators. The police expected this to raise the profile of the case and get more people looking for Lam, but they didn't anticipate the response they got. The video, which shows Lam getting in and out of an elevator with the door stuck open, pushing random buttons, making strange gestures and movements, and looking terrified, became an internet storm due to the unusual behaviors Lam was exhibiting.
So she peers out the doors, runs back in, and then presses several buttons. Strange behavior, but what happened afterward is even more bizarre.
The elevator's camera feed video was a viral hit, but didn't bring the LAPD any closer to solving Elisa Lam's disappearance. There were still no suspects, no evidence, and no clues leading police to Lam's whereabouts. Still, by releasing the video, they had brought her disappearance to far more people than your average missing person. The hope was that someone would come forward with information. That never happened, but soon the case would blow wide open anyway. Just days after the LAPD released the elevator video, guests at the Cecil Hotel began to complain about issues with the water supply in their rooms. A few reported a strange odor or dark color. Some even reported that the water had an odd taste to it. The hotel's management sent maintenance workers to the roof to take a look at the water tanks there. On top of the roof of the Cecil Hotel were 4 water tanks. They were about 12 feet up and could only be entered from the top, which meant employees had to use a ladder to get in. Each tank had a heavy metal lid held down with a latch. When hotel employees came to the roof, they found that the main water tank had its latch left open. Upon removing the lid, they found Elisa Lam dead in the water. During the course of the investigation, police learned that Elisa Lam had previously been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. She took several medications, including antipsychotics. Lam frequently blogged about her struggles with mental illness. In some posts, she worried about relapses, and she even talked about having to drop classes in college due to issues managing her illnesses. She was reportedly faring poorly in school and worried that the number of classes she had needed to leave reflected badly on her in her college transcript. This introduced the possibility of suicide into the case. While Lam's family claimed that she wasn't suicidal, it can often be difficult to tell if a person truly is suicidal or not, especially to those closest to the person. There was a very real possibility that something happened while she was staying at the Cecil. Perhaps she missed too many doses of her medication and suffered a psychotic break that, when given the opportunity, led her to commit suicide. After Elisa Lam's body was removed from the water tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel, the coroner performed an examination. They found no evidence of any sort of injury or trauma, nothing to indicate foul play. There was no evidence of sexual assault, nor of any compounding factors that may have contributed to her death. In the end, Lam's death was officially ruled an accidental drowning, but that didn't bring police any closer to figuring out why or how she ended up in the water tank.
There were 2 possibilities that a lot of folks were looking at when Elisa's body was found in the water tank, and one of them was suicide and one of them was murder.
The coroner did order a toxicology screen, but after weeks in the water tank, Lam's body didn't have much blood left to test. The report was officially considered to be incomplete. The test did detect trace amounts of alcohol and Lam's prescription medication she took for her bipolar disorder and depression, but the exact amounts of the medication could not be determined. It didn't find any evidence of illicit drugs, nor of any sort of poison or toxic substance. Once again, police were at a dead end. Given the evidence, it seemed that Lam, not under the influence of any substances, simply came up to the roof of the hotel and climbed into the water tank. The reason the internet is so fixated on Elisa Lam's case is due to the various details that don't seem to add up. First of all, there's the matter of the hotel roof, which is supposed to be inaccessible to guests. The only way to get to the roof was through alarmed doors. There may be an explanation here: the outside fire escape, which has a ladder leading to the roof. A YouTuber tried this exact thing shortly after Lam's death and made it to the roof easily. Then there's the issue of getting into one of the tanks, which were high up and could only be opened by lifting the lid on top. The lids also did not have hinges, meaning they needed to be removed completely and were also very heavy. It is possible, however, that Lam found the lid already open, as the aforementioned YouTuber did when they climbed onto the hotel roof. There's just one problem. When Lam's body was found, the lid to the main water tank was closed. It would be nearly impossible to do this from inside the tank, as one would have to push up on the heavy lid while floating in the water, maneuver it into place, and then drop it. This may indicate that someone from the outside closed the lid after Lam got inside. The elevator video released by police brought attention to the case from the internet at large, and before long, armchair detectives began closely watching it for clues or making different interpretations of Elisa Lam's actions in the video, such as seeming to hide from a pursuer, press random buttons, and make strange gestures in the air. Theories about the video vary widely, with some arguing that it shows a woman experiencing a psychotic break, to others arguing that it's evidence of something paranormal. In recent years, a popular supernatural explanation has been that Lam either accidentally or intentionally played something called the elevator game, a series of complicated actions performed inside an elevator and moving the cab to specific predetermined floors that can, according to the viral legend, open up a passage to another world or dimension. Generally, theories about the video tend to fall into three categories. In the first, Elisa Lam had a psychotic episode, then later either accidentally or intentionally ended up in the hotel's water tank. The second theorizes that someone was after Lam and the video shows her panicking and trying to hide. In this theory, her pursuer killed her and placed her in the water tank. The third category is simply supernatural. These often revolve around Lam seeing or encountering something in the hotel that drove her mad and led to her death. Another enduring mystery of Elisa Lam's disappearance involves her blog. After Lam's death, her blog, hosted on Tumblr, reportedly continued to update. There were updates throughout February 2013 and a few in early March. The new updates then paused until the end of March when 2 new posts went up, and 1 in the beginning of April. This was followed by 2 at the end of April, 1 in June, and a final one in December 2013. Elisa Lam's phone was never found after she disappeared, so this leads some case researchers to believe that someone might have taken it, and they're the ones who made the post after her death. Another possibility is that someone else gained access to her Tumblr account, either by hacking or possibly a friend or family member taking it over after her death. The most commonly accepted explanation is that Lam used Tumblr's queue feature to schedule posts in the future, and these posts appeared as scheduled. None of the posts after Lam's disappearance or death have any original text by her, as they're all reblogs, like retweets but for blog posts. While this makes sense for many of the post-mortem updates to her blog, the ones posted sporadically after early March 2013 seem odd. Why schedule these posts so far in advance when they're not that different from her typical posts? In September 2013, Elisa Lam's parents filed a lawsuit against the Cecil Hotel, alleging neglect and insufficient safety protections led to Lam's death earlier that year. Their argument was that the hotel didn't properly secure the roof or water tanks. In 2015, however, the Cecil Hotel successfully got the suit dismissed. Lawyers for the hotel pointed out that since access to the roof via normal means was restricted with doors locked by keycard or passcode, they weren't liable for however Lam managed to get onto the roof. Their lawyers also pointed out that the water tanks themselves were designed in such a way to make it clear that guests weren't allowed to climb on them and open the lids. The tops of the water tanks required a ladder to get to and, as previously mentioned, were heavy and not hinged. The judge in the case concluded that while Lam's death was certainly tragic, there is simply no way she could have made her way into those water tanks by mistake. Since police had yet to even figure out how Lam got onto the roof and into the water tanks in the first place, and no similar incidents had occurred, the only way the hotel could have prevented Lam from getting into the tanks would be to know what she was going to do before she did it. In the early 2000s, American cinema had a brief love affair with J-horror, or horror films created in Japan. The biggest of these was 2002's The Ring, starring Naomi Watts as a mother trying to protect her son from a curse. This film was based on a 1998 Japanese film, Ringu, which in turn was based on a 1991 novel of the same name by Japanese author Koji Suzuki. The Ring wasn't Suzuki's only brush with Hollywood, though. Another of Suzuki's stories was made into an American film called Dark Water and was released in 2005. Starring Jennifer Connelly, the film shares some eerie similarities to Elisa Lam's case. In Dark Water, a woman and her daughter move into a new apartment complex only to find that the building seems to be haunted, with numerous problems cropping up, including the building's water, which is a murky color and has problems with its pressure, and the elevator in the apartments, which behaves oddly. Spoilers ahead, but before long, the two find out the dark truth. A young girl died in the building's rooftop water tank, and it's her decaying corpse as well as her restless ghost causing the numerous issues in the apartments. It's unknown if Elisa Lam ever saw this movie, but the similarities seem to be nothing more than a coincidence, albeit an eerie one. Check out one of our newest videos right here, plus even more grunge videos about your favorite morbid mysteries are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.